You have to understand the level of delusion here, Anna. It is not just about losing money, it is about how you lose it. We are talking about a guy who was so rich, his housekeeper, his actual housekeeper, became a millionaire just from the stock options he gave her.
That sounds like the American dream on steroids.
Exactly. But then fast forward to 2023. He dies, and his wife, his widow, wakes up the next morning, essentially, and finds out that not only is the $6 billion gone, but she is $150 million in the hole. And the kicker? She did not know that he had leveraged everything.
When you say everything,
I mean everything. The houses, the art, the cars, even her wedding ring.
no way.
Yes, her wedding ring was pledged as collateral to a bank. She is finding out about this after the funeral. Imagine that conversation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Daily News English podcast. I'm Anna.
And I am Peter. It is great to be back behind the microphone.
It really is. Now, before we get started with today's incredible story, we wanted to address the silence on the channel recently. We actually took a few days off for a short vacation to recharge our batteries.
That is right. It is important to step away sometimes so we can come back with fresh energy and better content for you all. So if you were wondering where the episodes were, we were just taking a brief holiday. But we are back now and ready to go.
And we're coming back with a story that's honestly hard to wrap your head around. It's a story about extreme wealth, extreme loss, and the absolute lengths people will go to in order to maintain an image.
It is a tragedy in the Shakespearean sense, but it's also a fascinating look at the psychology of money. We are deep diving into the life and death of Gary Winnick. If you lived in Los Angeles in the late 90s, you knew this name. He was the king of the city.
But, as we're going to find out, being the king can be a very expensive job to keep, especially when the kingdom runs out of gold.
So, let's set the scene here. To understand Gary Winnick, we need to understand the era that made him. We need to go back to the late 1990s, the internet boom, the dot-com bubble.
It was a crazy time. I remember reading about it. It was a time when money just felt free. If you had a website or a tech idea, investors were practically throwing cash at you.
It really was the Wild West of finance, and Gary Winnick was right at the center of it. Now, this guy didn't just appear out of nowhere. He came from the world of junk bonds. He worked with Michael Milken and Drexel Burnham Lambert in the 80s.
Michael Milken is a huge name in financial history.
Exactly. He was known as the junk bond king. So Winnick learned from the master. He learned how to move big money around. He learned about leverage. He learned that high risk could equal massive rewards.
For our listeners who might not be financial experts, junk bonds are high-yield, high-risk bonds. It's basically a way for companies with less than perfect credit to borrow money, but they have to pay higher interest rates. It's risky business.
Right. So Winnick takes that aggressive, high-risk mindset from the 80s and applies it to the tech boom of the 90s. He starts a company called Global Crossing, and the idea was actually brilliant.
What was the core concept?
They were going to lay fiber optic cables across the bottom of the ocean to connect the world. They were effectively building the plumbing of the internet.
That sounds like a solid business plan, honestly. We use fiber optics every day now. Every time we stream a movie or send an email, we're using that infrastructure.
That's the ultimate irony of this story. He was right about the technology. He was absolutely correct that the world would need massive connectivity. But he was wrong about the timing. He bet that the demand for bandwidth, for data speed, was going to explode immediately.
And it didn't happen fast enough.
No, the demand grew, but not at the lightning speed he needed to pay off the massive debts he took on to build the cables. But before the crash, he was flying high.
How high are we talking?
Flying high doesn't even begin to describe it. Global Crossing went public and the stock price went vertical. It became a $50 billion company. $50 billion. And Winnick himself, at his peak, he was worth $6.2 billion. He was the richest man in Los Angeles.
That's unimaginable wealth. $6 billion? That's enough to fund entire countries.
It's the kind of wealth where you completely lose touch with reality. There's this story that really paints the picture of that era. He was so wealthy and the stock was doing so well that his housekeeper, just a regular employee in his home, became a millionaire on paper because of the stock options he gave her.
That's incredibly generous, though. It sounds like a fairy tale.
It is generous, sure, but it also shows the level of excess. When your cleaning staff are millionaires, you're living in a different stratosphere. And he spent like it. He believes the money tap would never turn off. He thought he had solved the game of capitalism.
And this is where the real estate comes in, right? Because you can't talk about Gary Winnick without talking about his house.
Casa Encantada. Just the name sounds expensive. It translates to enchanted house. It is in Bel Air. He bought it in 2000 for $94 million.
Wait, $94 million in the year 2000? That must have been a record.
It was. At the time, that was the most expensive home sale in the history of the United States. It shattered every record. But buying it was just the start.
He renovated it, didn't he?
He did not just renovate it, he obsessed over it. He spent tens of millions more fixing it up. He hired hundreds of artisans. We are talking about restoring a 40,000 square foot property to museum level standards. This wasn't a house, Anna. It was a monument to himself. It was his version of the Palace of Versailles.
40,000 square feet? I cannot even visualize that. That is like a shopping mall or a large hotel.
It is massive. It has 60 rooms, and he filled it with world-class art. He had paintings by Cy Twombly, Edward Hopper. He was on the board of the Museum of Modern Art. He was hosting these lavish fundraisers. Presidents and movie stars were coming to dinner. He was the guy everyone in LA wanted to know.
It sounds like the Great Gatsby.
It is exactly like the Great Gatsby. And just like Gatsby, the foundation was cracking underneath the glamour.
When did the bubble burst?
The dot-com bubble burst in March 2000. In Global Crossing, it turned out to be a house of cards. They had borrowed billions to lay those cables under the ocean, but their customers were mostly other internet startups.
And those startups were going bust.
Exactly. The customers went broke. They could not pay their bills. So Global Crossing had no revenue coming in, but they still had mountains of debt to service.
So the company is sinking. What happened to the employees?
This is the part that makes people angry. In January 2002, Global Crossing filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It was one of the biggest bankruptcies in history at the time. It wiped out tens of billions in market value. Thousands of people lost their jobs. But worse, many employees had their retirement savings, their 401ks, tied up in company stock.
And they lost it all.
They lost almost everything. People who thought they were saving for a secure retirement were left with pennies.
That's devastating. But Winnick, did he go down with the ship?
No, and this is the controversy. Before the ship went down, Winnick had already cashed out. He sold about $730 million worth of stock while the price was still high.
Wow. So while the ship is sinking and the employees are drowning, he's taking a lifeboat filled with gold bars.
That is exactly what it looked like to the public. He walked away with nearly $750 million in cash. He was called before Congress to testify. He was villainized in the press. He paid some fines, sure. He paid $55 million to settle shareholder lawsuits. But he was never criminally charged. He walked away a free man.
So technically, he should have been set for life. I mean, $700 million. Even after taxes and settlements, you have hundreds of millions left. You could spend $1 million a month and never run out.
You would think so. Any rational person would think so. But this is where the story gets psychological. This is where it gets into the addiction of status. Because he did not downsize.
He kept the house?
He kept the house. He kept the staff. He kept the art. He kept the lifestyle. He was still going to the elite clubs, the fancy restaurants. He was still acting like the king of LA. But the income was gone. The golden goose was dead.
That's a dangerous game. Living a billionaire lifestyle on a millionaire budget?
It is the most dangerous game. He started investing in other things to try and make the money back. He tried media ventures, other tech startups, but he did not have the magic touch anymore. A lot of these ventures collapsed or ended up in lawsuits. He was bleeding money.
But he had so much of it to start with. how do you burn through hundreds of millions of dollars?
You underestimate the cost of maintaining a 40,000 square foot estate and an ego to match. The property taxes alone on Casa Encantada would be millions of dollars a year. The landscaping, the security, the insurance, the chefs, the cleaners, it burns cash like a furnace. And then the legal battles.
Legal battles.
He was constantly being sued or suing others. Lawyers are incredibly expensive. So as the cash dwindled, he had a choice: sell the house and admit defeat, or find another way.
He chose the other way.
He chose the shadow wife. He started borrowing, and this is the secret part that nobody knew about until recently. He started taking out massive loans. We are talking about a $100 million revolving loan from a company called CIM.
A revolving loan.
Think of it like a gigantic credit card. He could draw money, pay some back, draw more. But because he needed so much cash, the bank needed security. They needed collateral.
The house.
The house, the Malibu beach house, the art collection, and as I mentioned in the beginning, even personal items.
It feels like he was gambling, like a gambler at a casino who has lost his chips, so he puts his car keys on the table. He was trying to win it all with one big deal, so he just kept pushing more chips into the center of the table.
That is exactly it. It is the gambler's fallacy. He probably thought, I did it once, I made $6 billion once, I am Gary Winnick, I can do it again. I just need one big hit to clear these debts. But the hit never came.
And his wife, Karen, she really knew nothing about this financial hole?
That is what she claims in the legal filings, and honestly, it is plausible. In these old-school, ultra-wealthy dynamics, often one partner handles all the finances. She sees the lifestyle, she sees the parties, she sees the staff. Why would she doubt it? He's the genius financier. He's the guy who conquered Wall Street.
It is a betrayal of trust, though.
It is a massive betrayal. But imagine the stress he must have been under. Every day waking up in this palace, knowing it's all mortgaged, knowing that if you stop swimming, you drown. And he kept that mask on until the very end. He never let the mask slip.
He died in November 2023, right?
Yes, suddenly, at age 76. And get this, he died just 2 weeks before he was scheduled to be deposed in a lawsuit about another failed investment.
That is incredibly convenient timing.
It is eerie. The pressure must have been immense. The walls were closing in from every side. And the moment he died, the dam broke. The lenders came calling immediately. They said, okay, he's gone. We want our money now.
And the debt was huge.
By 2023, the debt had swollen to roughly $155 million. That's because of the interest rates. When you borrow that kind of hard money, the interest accumulates so fast. It's like a snowball rolling down a hill, getting bigger and bigger every second.
So the widow is left with nothing?
Worse than nothing. She's fighting foreclosure. They put the house on the market for $250 million, hoping to sell it, pay off the banks, and keep the difference. But the market for a $250 million house is very, very small. It has not sold.
It's too expensive?
It's incredibly expensive, and the market has cooled down. Plus, everyone knows it's a distressed sale now. The sharks smell blood in the water.
So she's being evicted from her own home?
Essentially, yes. The company, CIM, moved to foreclose on Casa Encantada and the Malibu property. The article says she didn't even know her wedding ring was at risk until after he was gone. It's a complete collapse of a dynasty.
It is such a cautionary tale. It challenges that idea that having money solves all your problems. We always think, if I just had $1 million, I would be happy.
Money solves survival problems. It solves the problem of hunger or rent or healthcare, but it does not solve ego problems. In fact, it amplifies them. Gary Winnick could have retired in 2002 with $500 million. He could have bought a beautiful $5 million house, invested the rest in safe index funds, and lived like a king for the rest of his days. Nobody would have bothered him.
But he needed to be the richest man in LA.
Identity is a powerful drug. He could not let go of who he was. He could not accept being just rich. He had to be a titan. And in the process, he destroyed what he had. It's tragic. The estate that symbolized his rise, Casa Encantada, became the centerpiece of his downfall. It literally ate his fortune.
It makes you wonder how many other people are living like that. On the surface, everything looks perfect. The Instagram photos are beautiful, but behind the scenes, it's all debt and panic.
I think it's more common than we realize. Maybe not at the billion-dollar level, but people overextend themselves all the time to maintain an image, keeping up with the Joneses. This is just the most extreme, high-stakes example of it.
From 6 billion to negative 150 million, it's hard to process that math.
It is, and it's a reminder that net worth is just a number on a screen. Cash flow is reality, and debt is a killer if you don't respect it.
Well, that's a heavy story, but a necessary one. It really makes you think about what wealth actually means.
Absolutely. Is wealth having a big house or is wealth having peace of mind? I think Gary Winnick proved that you can have the house and zero peace of mind.
I think I will take the peace of mind.
Me too, every single time.
All right, let's take a breath and look at some of the language used in the story. There were some very powerful words here that are essential for talking about business and finance.
Definitely. This story was full of financial and legal terms that are really useful to know, especially if you read the business news.
The first word I want to highlight is colossus. The article describes Global Crossing as a $50 billion colossus.
That is a fantastic word. A colossus is something that is huge, enormous. It comes from the ancient statue, the Colossus of Rhodes, which was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. So when you call a company a colossus, you're saying it's a giant, dominating force. It's not just big, it's monumental.
But as we saw, even a colossus can fall, and when it falls, it makes a lot of noise.
Right. The next word describes what happens to his money, dwindle. We saw his fortune dwindle to nothing.
To dwindle means to gradually become smaller and smaller. It is not necessarily a sudden crash. It is a slow shrinking, like a candle burning down, or a water reservoir drying up in a drought.
Exactly. Or a bank account that you keep spending from without putting money back in. His money dwindled over 20 years until it was gone. And part of the reason it dwindled was his lifestyle, which leads to our next word, ostentatious.
Oh, that is a fun word to say. Ostentatious. It sounds fancy.
It means showy, designed to impress people. It's about displaying wealth in a very obvious way. If you buy a regular car, that's functional. If you buy a gold-plated car with diamond rims, that's ostentatious.
It is not just expensive, it's loud about being expensive. Winnick's lifestyle, the 60-room house, the army of staff, was highly ostentatious.
He wanted everyone to see his wealth. Okay, next up is a real estate term that came up regarding his apartment in New York, pied-à-terre.
This is borrowed from French, right?
Yes, literally meaning foot on the ground. In English, a pied-à-terre is a small apartment or house that you keep in a city, usually for occasional use. It's not your main home.
It's like a secondary city base. He had a pied-à-terre in New York at the Sherry Netherland Hotel, which, by the way, is probably more expensive than most people's main homes.
For sure. But because he spent so much, he got into legal trouble. Let's look at litigation.
Litigation is just the formal legal word for the process of taking legal action. If you are in court suing someone or being sued, you are involved in litigation. It's a noun. You would say the company is tied up in litigation.
And because of that constant litigation, he needed loans. He had to put up collateral. This is a crucial concept in banking.
Collateral is something valuable that you promise to give to the bank if you cannot pay back your loan. It's security for the lender. So if you get a mortgage, your house is the collateral. If you don't pay the money back, they take the house.
And Winnick used everything as collateral, his art, his homes, his cars, which brings us to the saddest word in the story, foreclosure.
Foreclosure is the legal process where the bank actually takes your property because you stopped making payments. You failed to pay the mortgage, so they seize the collateral. His widow is currently fighting for a closure on the mansion.
It's the end of the road in real estate. And finally, let's look at insolvency. The story mentions bankruptcy, which is a legal status, but insolvency is the financial state.
Insolvency is the state of being unable to pay your debts. You are insolvent when you owe more than you have. You might not have filed for bankruptcy yet, but if your liabilities are bigger than your assets, you're technically insolvent.
Winnick was definitely insolvent by the end. He was living on borrowed time and borrowed money. One more concept I want to touch on is the sunk cost fallacy. You mentioned the gambler's fallacy, which is similar.
Oh, that is a good one. The sunk cost fallacy is when you keep investing time or money into something that is failing, just because you've already invested so much into it. You don't want to waste what you already spent, so you spend more.
It's like fixing an old car. You spend $1,000 fixing the engine, then the transmission breaks. You think, well, I already spent $1,000 on the engine, I can't stop now, so you fix the transmission. Then the brakes fail. You keep throwing good money after bad money.
That was Winnick with his lifestyle. He had invested so much in his image that he couldn't stop, even when it was destroying him.
This story is a lot to digest. It's a mix of history, high finance, and just raw human tragedy.
It really is. It shows that no matter how high you climb, gravity is always waiting, and secrets have a way of coming out, usually at the worst possible time.
Hopefully, we can all learn a little lesson from Gary Winnick today. It's better to have a small house that you truly own than a palace that owns you.
I think so. Living simply sounds pretty good right about now. No $100 million loans for me, thanks.
I agree. I'll stick to my debit card.
If this episode helped you understand English and maybe finance a little better today, please hit the like button. Every click helps us grow and tells YouTube that learning English through real, complex stories truly matters.
We're dedicated to making English simple, clear, and practical, using real news to help learners grow step by step. If you want to improve your listening skills every day, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode.
Where are you listening from? Leave a comment with your country or city and tell us, would you rather have extreme wealth with extreme stress or a modest life with peace of mind? We love hearing your perspective.
Thank you for learning with us today and for welcoming us back after our short break. Thank you for turning daily news into real English progress. Keep listening, keep growing. You've got this.